Hello, hello. Part two of the amazing attempt to speak Stephen Shadley, who's so kind to reschedule with me.
Oh,
Hey!
oh my God.
Oh my gosh. I am so sorry about last week.
I couldn't figure out. I think we both had lousy internet connections.
I'm pretty sure that is the case. I know I did.
I was there and I was yelling, I was screaming at a phone that you couldn't hear. It was very funny. How are you?
Well, at least it's good. I get to see you like refreshed and happy and and at home. Hi.
Yeah, and relaxed at this work. So
Exactly.
that's wonderful. I'm good.
Pardon the barking dog in the background. How have you been? Where are you?
I'm up at my house. I have this house. Well, I've been living upstate on weekends since 1988, and
on weekends.
And so I've been coming up here, and I moved from a home that I had been in for a long, long time to a property that was nearby, but it once had a home on it built by these English sisters in 1913 and designed by this really famous art director of the silent movie era. And so but it had burned to the ground in the 70s. It was nothing but a ruin. And I rebuilt it at,
Did you
great
rebuild
expense.
it in the same?
I did. I
had
a few photographs of it, when it was built. And I thought, as an homage to the guy who designed it, who was famous in his own right, I thought it should look the same because it's viewable from the roads below. Yeah. So I did. And then, but the inside is my own, my own kind of, my own ideas, my own design.
I would hope so.
Different. Yeah.
Given how good those designs are.
And it's featured. It's on AD right now. It's up there.
It is right this second?
Yeah. It's up on, it's on the, it's the online version. We don't always get in print these days.
Oh God, I mean, that's great.
Online, yeah, but it is, awesome. It's up there and it's, they've been pushing it and I'm pushing it. So it's okay, very exciting.
I'm going to be going to AD Online immediately. Oh,
and also, it's, when you and I were intending to speak last week, it was the 5th anniversary of my having moved in here. So that was exciting.
Congratulations. I mean, you needed to spend your day with the house. That was not a day for other conversations, I guess. You needed privacy.
Obviously, yeah, fate interceded
exactly.
On behalf of both of us.
Tell me, Stephen, I've known you for a long time now.
A long time.
Like, how did that happen?
I know, and how come we don't get to see one another more often? I mean, it's weird, this business and the way we all live.
You fall into, I think I'm blaming my kids.
Yeah.
Because when you fall into that, you're like, holy crap. And then you come up for breath and you realize it's been however many years since you saw your kids. But I adore you, and I used to. You and I both would go to these parties and we'd be on our own, which is a weird thing that they used to do.
Yeah.
These Architectural Digest parties where we'd show up by ourselves, and it could be very uncomfortable when you didn't know people. And I always see you as like a lifeboat of awesomeness and sweetness.
Oh, same, right back at you.
And I think I saw you like in the past couple of years when we saw Paige when she was signing her book.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God. Oh,
and that was kind of like, she was sort of not great. So I think we were all being very hushed and respectful in that room. But I think that's the last time I clapped eyes on you.
I had visited Paige a couple times because I have a client and a project that I was working on in Palm Beach. Yeah. So each time I got down there, I would call and see how she was. And
that's so great.
Check in on her, and she was, those a couple of strokes that she had toward the end, took a lot out of her physically, but mentally she was so on it. And I did my first book. It was a big deal last year during the pandemic. And I thought, I'm sending this to Paige. I really want her to see it. And
so great.
And I called her after I knew that she had received it. And she said, "Oh, Stephen," she said, "you know, someone put a book on my desk the other day and it was about Hollywood homes." And I thought, well, good luck. Those don't always do so well. And then she said, and then I sat down and I realized it was your book. And I started reading, and she said, I spent the whole day and I read it cover to cover, and I love it. And, the way we felt about our experience, joining AD when we did, it was, it was great. And it was, not long after that we lost her. So
I'd send her like some love notes.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, just because, those people loom so large in our lives, and they're so good to us, and it's nice to be loving. Be loving with them when there's nothing that they can do to help you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
it's
always that weird energy of, I hope they realize that I really like them. So,
well, and I in the beginning, I go way back. I'm older than you, but I remember that it meant so much career-wise, to be welcomed into that, the club of AD. And I was terrified of her. I'd heard stories that she was like ruthless, and
I think we all were.
Yeah, she was the editor. She defined the magazine editor. And as you got to know her, and as the years went by, you just saw another side that was funny and offhanded, and a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
Loved her so much.
All right, so let's talk about you, my love.
Well, yeah.
How did you get into this business?
Oh, so circuitously. I wanted to be a painter. Well, and when I was a kid, I wanted to be an animator. I wanted to work for Walt Disney. I grew up in the Midwest in St. Louis. And then my entire family over the years in the early 60s migrated to California, Southern California. So
it was the gateway to the West. How could you not?
Oh my God. And in those days it was, it was happy days, it was like, it was another world. So I loved it there. And I had an art teacher in high school whom I am still in touch with, and he just 2 weeks ago turned 101, and he still drives the car, and he's my mentor. Okay. He's the guy that. I'm
excited to hear that.
Yeah, but I ended up working in the studios. I was a scenic artist. I painted backdrops for the movies, and I thought, well, maybe I'll try to be an art director.
And was that part of your relationship with the house that you rebuilt? That he was.
Oh my God, so much. Yes, absolutely.
That you ended up in a house of a person who had done that.
Yeah, and did it at such a level that it's just astonishing. He's the first art director inducted into the Art Directors Hall of Fame. His name is Wilfred Buckland, and he built these major Hollywood sets. Yeah, and a good-looking guy.
Nice. I love. I'm a huge fan of Schenkel, and all of these people who do careers like ours, but then also have this stage love. I think I'm always drawn to their work. I think because, and I assume that must include you, because of the compositions are really theatrical, which is not to say over the top. It just has drama. And you said that. You said drama is the one thing that should not be missing from a room.
Yeah, and also that obsession with animation. When I made my mother take me to see Sleeping Beauty, Walt Disney's Sleeping Beauty, like 7 times. We had to get on a bus to go see it, and but there was a palette, this like beautiful, muted yet colorful palette, and these backgrounds by this painter named Ivan Durrell, who was kind of a wonderful painter on his own. They were such a big influence in terms of just the way I looked at things, and I think I still carry a lot of that today.
And so you're in California. Is that where you were when you went west?
Yeah, we were in Southern California. So I kind of grew up in that area, and I moved to New York. Well, then I worked, as a scenic artist. You bounce around to the studios. I did 5 years on the road with a touring show called Disney on Parade. That was, a one of those arena shows, you know, like the ice
sure.
we called it Holiday on Wood. And it was, you know, this like band of people that I've never been away or out on my own. And it was this extraordinary experience. And I painted all the characters. I went to Disneyland and learned how to paint Mickey and Donald, and I was even
like every artistic child's dream.
Yeah, yeah. And I got to be, because I had watched the Mickey Mouse Club, I got, you know, for a while I was the voice of Donald Duck.
What?
And yes, on that show, and I recorded it at Paramount Studios.
What? You're kidding me.
And I told Paige that story
crazy.
when I first met her, and she introduced me, and she said, I'm not going to say what, I had a partner, Richard Gillette, at the time, and she said, I'm not going to say who, but one of them was the voice of Donald Duck. And I had to get up and I said, oh, thank you, Paige. And that stuck. Every time we would do anything socially with her, it was like she would make me do the duck.
It is so crazy to have an impression of somebody in a sense that you know them, and then find out a huge Easter egg like that. And yeah, I'm saying like, this is bananas.
Yeah.
Wow, that is crazy. And so from there, Disney on Parade, and where did that travel to? All over the country?
Well, you know, it's just, I got to travel the world. We did all over the country, and Mexico and Canada, but then I went to Europe, I went to Australia.
And they would just like strike the sets and you would have to redo them in each place, or?
Yes, it was these massive semi trucks that drove around the country, and we flew. Some of my best friends in life to this day are people that I met on that show. You know, we were all just like kids.
And how old were you guys?
I was like 21. I was really, you know, I was a kid.
Yeah.
So, and you know, and you got to see the world through different, you know, a whole different perspective. If you hadn't, you know, I hadn't traveled. I was like close to home.
Yeah, but at the same time, it was showing you that all these different places had this same love affair.
Yes.
With fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was all about the fantasy, and I think it still is to this day. It's hard to get over. You know, I mean, I don't know what the movies did to us, but you know, I'm not sure it was great, but it, you know, it's made
I'm sure it was great.
romantics of all of us.
Excuse me, I have to throw a ball. So how did you stop doing that?
Well, I finally left. I mean, the show kind of, you know, we did all these shows, and finally it was like time to go.
Years or?
5 years. Over 5 years, I traveled on and off, but you know, doing the American stuff and then doing the foreign units, and then, you know, and I would direct people in Australia and Europe and kind of teach them what I knew at that point. But then I wanted to be a serious artist. I wanted to be a painter. So I decided that I would try out New York. And I had a little house in Laurel Canyon that I was living in at the time. And I leased that out. And I thought I'll spend a year in New York. And that was 1976. And I've never left.
Never left.
Yeah.
Yay! Yay!
Yeah.
Yes.
Yay.
East Coast.
Yeah, and you know, I brought my mother out here. She lived here to the end of her life. My brother moved out here. You know, friends have moved out here. So,
but you still have a foothold in California. You still have a house.
Well, I still work there a lot.
I know you work there a lot, but do you have a place there?
Don't have a place, but I have a place to stay.
You have a what?
I have a place to stay. I have.
Yes, I'm sure you have many places to stay.
Yeah. So you know, and I'm working out there again now, so it's fun.
So you came here to be a painter, and what, you got a studio space? I mean, how do you have like a third career as a painter?
Well, I did. Yes, I had my paintings were on show at the Spoleto Festival in Charleston. Yeah, I did these portraits. They were
was
like,
my next. Yeah, were they figurative? Was this, you know,
very figurative? I mean, they were super realistic. They were very, you know, a la Chuck Close kind of, like
sure, of course.
Black and white images of people.
So photorealism from photographs or from
photos, but I took the photos and they were all friends who were in show business in some capacity. So my first was a guy that I knew from the Disney show, Tommy Walsh. Was one of the original members of a chorus line. Mm-hmm. So when I came to New York, he was in a chorus line. I took his photograph backstage in his costume, and that was my first of those portraits. So and I knew some artists that, you know, New York to me was extraordinary because in California it seemed like you were sort of confined to where, you know, whatever sort of circle you traveled in. In New York, I mean, I think we all have this experience here. You just suddenly, you're doing things that you never thought about. You're meeting weird people, you know, wonderful, you know, and this artist happened to know Jasper Johns and Robert Rauschenberg and, you know, and
that moment in the art world,
oh,
as
man.
a young man with talent, just must have been so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle. I don't think I ever really made it as a painter, but it evolved. At that time, I met a designer, Robert Bray, and his firm was Bray Scheibel.
Sure.
They were those big, you know, high-tech people of the 1980s in Architectural Digest at the time. And Bob became not only a great friend, but he became my real design mentor.
Was he on that trip with us? On the train?
No, but Harry Schnapper was with you.
Yes, Harry Schnapper. No, I think the three of us were just there. You know, Harry Schnapper now lives in my building.
Yes, I know. I remember that. And I saw you two, and I thought, okay, those are the coolest people on this train. That's who I want to hang with. It was like, yeah, just yeah.
Were you still at Bray Scheibel when we did that?
I never worked there, but Bob got me. He kind of. Oh, another weird story. You know, when I moved to New York, I did a set for an off-Broadway play. I designed a set for a little off-Broadway play called The Rat's Nest. And the people, this actor, Michael Murphy, and some people who were principals, and it was based on a sleazy restaurant on the Upper East Side called Dr. Generosity. And the owners decided after the play was a success that they wanted to snazz up the restaurant. And they went to Bob Bray because, you know, I had introduced Bob to all of them. And here he was, this very important and accomplished designer. And Bob said, look, I've got a partner. I can't do this. It's too small a budget. But I think you could do it. And he said, and I said, I don't know anything about that. And he goes, yeah. You could do better than a lot of people out there. He said, and I'll look over your shoulder. So, and I did a restaurant. It was called Camelback and Central. And it was my first job as a designer.
And it's not easy to do hospitality. It's your first job.
No. I mean, but of course, who knew? I didn't know. I knew from nothing. So It was just a challenge.
I think that's kind of a leitmotif when I'm talking to people on these talks and when they talk about going into business. A lot of them say, if I had known what I was doing, I would never have done it. If they knew, what the learning curve was going to be.
Well, but, I'd gladly do it again.
You seem okay. I'm not so worried about you. So did you just put your paintbrushes down, or did you just think, okay, this will be my side gig to pay bills?
Yeah, well, I had so many side gigs. I was also, at the time, I was a
Donald Duck,
a runway photographer for the Los Angeles Times. So I was like every 6 months I would do the shows. I would do the New York, fall and spring shows. So, and I worked with this woman who was just the loveliest editor you could ever meet, knowing how those editors could be. She was so kind and so sweet. And my first week, I was not a professional photographer. I just got the gig because I knew someone at the paper and they suggested me and she embraced me.
But yeah, a visual polymath is what that's called.
So I ended up doing that for like 5 years. And I got to meet all those people. I met Oscar de la Renta, Norma Kamali, Calvin Klein, Perry Ellis, the list was, because she was on very, very kind of like professional and personal terms with so many of those people, and they adored her. So I just kind of was along for the ride, but it was so much fun.
And so many people to bump into again in New York.
Yeah.
And them's a lot of New Yorkers. So when did you choose? Did you feel like you had to choose, or you just thought this, or it just took off and you couldn't, it was a runaway train, you had to?
Well, back to Paige, I think I did the restaurant on my own, but then Richard Gillette, who's a really accomplished designer and a painter, a lovely, fine painter, so we both came from this background of painting, and Richard did a lot of trompe l'oeil effects. We started a project. He asked me to help him on a project, and I think we worked for over 10 years together as a team. And we were lucky enough to do an apartment for Robert and Catherine Altman, the film director. And I think we were at a party in Los Angeles, and someone who was one of the editors then at AD talked to us and then suggested to Paige that we might be worth meeting. So we got this invitation to tea at the Carlisle. Do you remember those days?
I do not remember those days, but nobody was inviting me to tea at the Carlisle.
Tea at the Carlisle, and Paige was. We had done a little house on the Hudson River for Diane Keaton, who was my friend at the time. I met Diane the year that I moved to New York, and we remain best of friends to this day. I mean, she's my pal, and I love her, and she, it's wonderful to be able to do these creative endeavors together, and then somebody with that much fame just kind of shines a little attention on you at the same time. And so Paige looked at Diane's project, which we were going to publish in HG. Remember HG?
No, HG.
HG.
Yeah, of course.
The early days. But she looked at the Altmans and she said, well, I love this and I will publish it. And we had another project we had done on Central Park West. And she said, and I'll publish this as well. And so that was 1990. So I think in May we had Diane's place in HG. We had the Altmans in AD.
Once you went AD, you couldn't go.
You had to stick it out, which I did. And then she introduced the very first AD 100, and lo and behold, she put us in it. So it was
lo and behold, nothing. I mean, of course.
Yeah, and then in November we had another piece in AD. So we didn't even have a business card. We were so under the radar. And I thought, well, I guess maybe this is what I'll do from now on.
I'm so sorry about.
Oh, I love it.
I threw the squeaky toy. It just didn't make it far enough.
No, I've been falling, and I miss my dog has been gone for a long time, and I'm having thoughts of a new dog, and so every time I run into a dog or see one, I have to really spend time getting to know them.
This guy's pretty cute. He's right there in the doorway.
Oh, look at him! What breed is he?
That's Percy. We were just away from him for a week. Oh, not quite a week, like 5 days. But he won't let me out of his sight now, which I like.
Nor should he.
So anyway, there's, there are so many ways to go about business, but obviously one of them is determined and ambitious, which I really admire. And one of them is like, you just can't help yourself. You become a success, which I just like, it blows me away. People like, I was talking to John Darien, and he just like, things just fell into his lap, the right time, the right place, and obviously he's the right person with a tremendous amount of talent.
Yeah.
And here you are, good enough to be doing traveling shows, and then good enough to be a photographer for years, and good enough to be a photorealist painter, which is no joke, as somebody who draws. Well, anybody can figure out that that's no joke. And then to just arrive fully formed out of Zeus's head onto the AD list, it's so cool. Because it's like you had no choice; it was going to happen.
Yeah, and I think in the beginning I thought, oh my God, I never saw myself as a decorator, and then when there was this measure of success and Paige embraced this and work began to come along, I just thought, hey, I really like doing this. This is fun.
So you do not begrudge fate taking you down this path?
Not at all. No, I feel really lucky in so many ways. I didn't have a life plan when I was a kid. We grew up in, just kind of modest way, and my mom worked her rear end off to, support my brother and me. And I didn't even know the directions to go. Nobody ever counseled me on all the important stuff in life. So it was finding your own way. But my mom was so resourceful, and I think that's, maybe what I got from her. It's just,
right. It wore off a little.
yeah.
It's also when you think of what you do as a designer, what one does, but you in particular, the notion that like all of these things that you did clearly were creating your toolbox.
Yeah.
The set design, the kind of composition that you have to know when you're looking through a photographer's lens, the painting, and then the decorating. It's pretty cool. I mean, it was not. It doesn't sound like any of it was like a bad effort.
No, and I've never had a style or a brand, as it were. I think I love adapting to very different situations.
Well, we work for people, of course.
Yeah, exactly, and they're all.
If you just
different,
impose yourself upon them,
and especially people in showbiz. I mean, they're creative in their own ways, and they see life through their lens. So all you can do is help to reflect that.
Yeah. And which is a nice way to think about anybody. Maybe exactly. It's a lesson that's more overt if you're working for people in the theater at large.
Yeah.
So how many do you think you're like 50-50 actors, theater people, and civilians?
Oh yeah, maybe, yeah. I mean, in the beginning, maybe more theatrical people lately. But fewer jobs, and kind of like I'm still a tiny office. I never became a big office.
You're taking care of every single job and every single detail.
Yeah, and I still do. So it's this very personal involvement with all these projects. And every time I start a new project, I think about movies, and I try to connect it with a movie somehow, and make a narrative for the project. Out of.
What are some of the movies that have connected you to your projects?
North by Northwest, man, that was like, that sort of faux Frank Lloyd Wright, house on the that was amazing. And of course those backdrops that Cary Grant and Eva Marie Saint are running across when they're on Mount Rushmore. Yeah, those are literally painted backdrops,
I'm glad to hear it. I'm hanging off of it would make me stressed out.
Yeah, well, I think that was partially built, but yeah, and I bought this book on the painted backdrops, of Hollywood, just because I fell in love with it. It was the most extraordinary book, just about 2 years ago.
And were they all like that, or were some of them like the movie Roberta, or like?
They were every movie you could conceive of.
Cocteau ones.
Oh yeah. No, these are all the Hollywood movies, and they are, they're all the scenic studios, and including the one where I worked, that was located on the lot at 20th Century Fox. And so in these photographs are the guys that I worked with, Benny and and Gordon Butcher, this kind of like cranky guy that was such an amazing painter, but he had painted the Yellow Brick Road, for God's sake. It was like you just kind of went, oh my God. So I actually used backdrops from that same studio when I did some green rooms, for once for the Emmys and once for the Academy Awards, and I got backdrops of Hollywood, that I used out the windows. So brought it home.
So when you do you draw for your clients? Do you draw elevations?
Well, I do. We do most of it in CAD. I have somebody great in the office who's just Robert, who just does, and it's been in my office for like 25 years, and he's just really, really good at it. So I do concept.
You don't miss doing it yourself?
Yeah, I feel like I can do CAD, but no. If you put
me down, no, I don't mean CAD. I mean, do you sketch for?
Oh yeah, no, I still do that. I still do concept sketches all the time, and yeah, but Yeah. I painted two murals here in my house. That's like what I've.
And what are they of?
They're landscapes of the. This is Greene County up here in the Catskills that I live in, and there's a wonderful book from the 19th century of photographs, late 19th century, taken all through the county. So one is a waterfall called Fawn's Leap, and the other is this big rock formation called Sphinx Rock. And you can see them in the AD things, so they're all.
And are well, I'm like, I kind of want to hang up on you and look at it right now, but I won't. But are they photoreal?
Yeah, they are. Well, yeah, to the degree.
You still got it.
I still got. Well, you know what? I thought, oh my God, you've lost your muse. I couldn't. I was terrified. I wasn't gonna be able to.
Hardly. You might have found.
And I have a good friend, Mary, who's a painter, who came and I said, Mary, I need some advice. I need to know from somebody who paints every day. What do I need to do? And she goes, look at Sargent's, the stuff that he did, the landscapes.
Yeah.
And she said, and
well, that's interesting because they're so painterly. They're not photoreal.
They're so beautiful, though.
They're
oh my
so
God,
beautiful. But
they're
it's
amazing.
like a squiggle when you back up, looks perfect, and then you look up close and you realize it's just a squiggle.
Yeah, which is the way that stuff all works. I mean, even as even those amazing backdrops of scenic art, once you got up close, those things were so expressive, and all those guys were watercolorists and painters in their own right. They were amazing.
So there are two views. I'm totally looking that up later. So that's on ad.com.
Yeah. ad.com.
So what do you want to work on that you haven't done yet? Which sounds like almost nothing.
Well, what I've grown to love, and I've had the opportunity to do it, and well, here in my own house especially, is maybe if I had to go back and do it all over and go to school, architecture would be something I would have studied. But I love.
No, and I don't mean do it all over. I mean, how could you wish for that? Things are.
But I've been doing it. I've been doing architecture on. I've added additions to homes.
Sure.
And I built this place from the ground up, albeit copying what was here. So I'm working on a new project in LA right now where I'm kind of the architect. So I just think, wow.
I hope at the very least you have an architect of record, a filing architect.
They're so important, aren't they? Those architects of record.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, I have a great guy that I've worked with before, and he's down with it. So that's the lovely part of it.
He lets you play, but make sure that thing is.
Yeah, it's like me pretending that I know AutoCAD when I know nothing about it.
So what's that house look like?
Well, it's a house that I started on. It's a house for Ryan Murphy, and
great.
and I did his house and it got published last year, and he had bought this place that was just kind of it was like a fake Spanish colonial built in the 80s, but in the most beautiful setting imaginable in the Palisades, and with like horses going up and down the street, and so he brought me in to help him put it together as a kind of cohesive whole. So I worked with like basically just the bare frames, and I reorganized some of the space, and I said, I think we need to just like really limit our palette, and he was so down with that. And
I mean, yeah, his work is so visual, has such a point of view that I'm sure two fluent eyes would have fun, yours and his.
Yeah.
Figuring out how to do that. Is that the best when you have sorry, I keep sinking into my chair. When you're working for somebody who has just great taste and really wants something specific, that's so much fun.
It is, because you get sort of like, taken along for the ride in their world, and you learn so much through their point of view.
It's vicarious living for people who want to try everything out.
and these artists who you respect, actors, directors, film people, you just, I mean, they're all there and they're at the top of their game. And you just kind of go, wow, I feel like, working with Robert Altman way back when,
Yeah.
it was like, I just, I felt so excited. And his wife, Catherine, who was such a part of that family of people that he worked with, just dragged me right in, and I remember visiting them on a set. He was doing a John Grisham film adaptation in Savannah, Georgia. And she said, we got a place here and I want you to come down and spend some time with Bob and me. So I think I spent like 4 days in the house with them. And the first night I arrived, she said, Bob's on, he's on location. We're going to drive the car out there. And I got out there and I knew everybody in that orbit. I had done offices for him in New York in addition to their place. And they just pulled up a big old director's chair and set it right next to Bob and said, here, why don't you just sit here, Stephen? And I just thought, what more could you ask? Yeah.
That's also interesting when I think of Robert Altman as, I who don't know him at all, think of him as like the master of the long tracking shot, right? Like the shot that never ends. And it's interesting to think how someone like that, how do they want their static space?
Yeah.
Like in film, you're just moving around all the time. And we have to figure out the composed elevation. Yeah. So when you say, I find your rooms like all like incredible compositions. And I thought it was so funny, which I wrote in the post, that that you said no room is complete without drama, but then you said you'd like your work to be known for its simplicity. And I was like, no, I don't know that those two things totally go together. Do they?
Well, I love simplicity in terms of like palette. It's like, I remember when we were doing Jen's first house, it was like, we decided that the elements were going to be this tropical wood, this, that was used throughout the house, this kumaru, bronze, and travertine. And we used it.
So sexy.
Yeah. Well, those were her ideas,
yeah.
but I ran with it because it was so much fun. And each time I'd say, well, hey, you can get travertine in red. What if we do this little table in red travertine? And, but it was, it was fun to have, a limit on what you could do, but no limit to, how you could express it.
Right. No, I love having a theory.
Yeah.
If there's some organizing principle, even if it's not detectable to somebody else, but for us working, that's, like a call to arms. That's very fun.
And do you find when you're working on projects, does it change from project to project, or do you
absolutely? And don't you turn this around on me. Yes, I do find it changes from project. I like it too.
Yeah.
There have been instances. So this is the weird thing about publishing, which I'm sure you will agree, is that, and it's what I think young designers want to know about. Not that we aren't just terribly young designers, but
you.
if you publish something and people associate it with you, and you don't want to be hemmed in. You don't want that to be the thing that you have to do all the time. But at the same time, it's a great calling card. But you never want to get stuck in that, right? You want people to see through it, to see what you're capable of, so you can do different things.
Well,
right?
Working on this book last year, it was like the first time I've done a book, and it's like bringing all these
Was it really? That was your first book?
Huh?
Oh, that was long overdue.
Yeah, well, yeah. And now it's gone.
You needed a year at home.
Yeah, and it was really great to work on that through the pandemic. But it was like, it was bringing all this really disparate work together, and I thought, okay, so how do you make this?
What's it?
Yeah. And yet there was because it was all Hollywood, there was that, you could use Hollywood as the kind of, as the running theme. And I also, have a dear friend, Patrick Pacheco, who is just the most amazing writer, writes about theater, writes about all this stuff. And I've known him a long time. And Patrick, you know, really wrote my book. I mean, we talked for a year and a half about each project and people and me and my history. And then he seemed to put it together in a way that, I found interesting.
Well, sometimes you need somebody on the outside to see where things come together. Can you connect your Hollywood work with your other work across the globe?
Yeah, I can. I
think
because it's maybe this whole idea of movies and narrative and what I try to bring to it. I'm always aware that that's I watched the 39 Steps, a 1935 Alfred Hitchcock that I had never seen. I thought I'd seen
just now. You've just seen it?
Just last night. I rented it last night. Watched it by myself, and I was like, I can't believe I've never seen this.
I can't believe you've never seen that.
Oh God, it was so beautiful and so, and it took you to the 30s. It was the 30s in England, and it was so beautiful. So it's just no.
When you speak to your clients or the homeowners or whatever, do you speak it? Do you speak the narrative to them? Are you able to verbalize it?
I do a lot of listening. I mean, I found that, not that I'm listening too much during this interview. I'm talking like a chatterbox, but I feel like, I feel like it's the best thing you can do is just listen, absorb, and then kind of go away and ponder it a little bit, and then come back with a thought and see if they respond to it. But yeah, I mean, as you said earlier, it's really about respecting the people that you're going to work for, and we're providing a service for people. So I think the more we can,
sometimes I think that since we live in this world, we can vocalize it.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to help tease it out of them in order to tell them what, maybe identify what it is they're saying in words.
Yeah, we're the interpreters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The divining rods.
Yes.
What was the pandemic like for you besides writing a book, which is
after all the work on this house and spending long weekends, the longer.
Thank heavens it was done.
The house was done, and I live alone, and so I spent a year, day in and day out here doing Zoom calls and certainly, connecting with people verbally and a couple of dear friends that I hang out with. But what I found living in this house was that all the things that I loved about building my own place, first time in my life, and then living in it, is just how satisfying it was to be able to enjoy it day in and day out. And I have a view that is, the whole range of the Catskill Mountains. I mean, it's the best part of this whole site, where I am. So that was just ever changing, and, being here day in and day out and battling the birds and the chipmunks and the, and the deer. And
there you are, back in Disney.
Yeah, exactly. only they're not as friendly as they were with Snow White. I did a little moss garden, in this crucible by my front door, and the chipmunks just every day they come in and they have their way. They just like tossing it out, and I have to put it back, and I'm going, drat you.
Well, they kept you company.
And I have a bird feeder hanging right off my dining room that I love, because literally the birds are like, inches from my face, so I get to watch them all. And then these little woodpeckers, because I have a cedar house, they just start pecking on my house, and I open the window and I go, no, that wasn't the point.
You've gone right from Disney to 9 to 5.
Yeah, exactly.
With what was it? Violet. What's her name? Anyway, what were the big surprises for you in building your own house? I think it's good to have a project for yourself every so often, also to be able to empathize with what's going on for our homeowners.
Well, you
to
know,
remind us
the cost of it, obviously,
sure
beyond what I thought I could do it for a certain amount, and it was more than double what I,
yeah. Do we think that
anticipated. And
that's just a thing?
I'm
Is it just
supposed to know about
impossible?
this stuff.
Yeah, I know. Well, also I think we're so used to seeing the prices before the markups
Yeah.
that when I find out what a price is with the markup, I'm like, that can't be.
That's me.
That's so expensive. Who would pay that? And I'm like, oh yes. Let's hope someone will pay that.
So is that, and then just the physical. I'm building on a cliff here, and it was.
Are you a cantilever?
Well, there's a rock outcropping, so but the structure, that was the old house was, there are stone walls that are like 4 feet thick. So I had an engineer come and sort of suss it all out before I ever began building, and he said, "This is going nowhere. You're fine. You're fine to build on this." So it, it's a lifelong project, which I kind of always feel wherever I live it is, but I feel like this is the last one for me. This may be this. I'm so happy here. This could happily be my last stop, but I have the whole property developed, and next, is a pool and this sort of like
a laundry list of things.
Summer house, yeah, and that's what I'm hoping to kind of tackle next.
What about your house in the city? What does it look like?
It's a loft that I moved into as an illegal loft tenant in 1977. And initially, when I came to New York in '76, I thought I thought I had leased a place in Soho, fabulous Soho in the '70s.
And Soho was a little sketchy at that point.
Yeah, well, Chinatown was even sketchier because that's where my loft was.
Yeah.
It was a 5-floor walk up on Canal. And I could walk to Soho, but I was nowhere near Soho.
Right.
And so it was a 5-floor walk up. And
they meant Sohouston. No.
But where I
live there? No,
I lived there for about a year and a half. I loved it. I had a view of the World Trade Center, and it had been a Chinese theater, so there were picture windows on the 5th floor, and a stage. Yeah. So I slept on stage, and then I moved into a loft on 27th Street where I still live, and work out of, and it was one of those weird places where. It was when landlords were trying to rent commercial space.
Sorry.
I love the squeak. I love the squeak of it all. And so the place was illegal. It was really meant to be a commercial lease, and so we all hung out there. We were all Latter-day hippies at the time. And now I still live in the same place. It's a fancy condo. We all bought in on the cheap.
Right.
And I've been president of the condo since '94. So.
It's surprising that you're so sticky. That you've stayed where you started, and also with the house that you restored it. There's something interesting there.
I always look at wherever I am as kind of where I'm going to remain. I mean, even though that's not the way it always works, but I invest a lot emotionally.
When considering one's own home,
mm-hmm.
You don't want to think of it as impermanent and transient. But it's cool that you've always worked out of home, because hopefully the pandemic, there was some notion of how that happened. I mean, I was walking around in my pajamas with dirty hair for weeks at a time. I just did not know what to do with myself, because also you travel all the time.
But I didn't travel through the pandemic. Yeah, no, it was weird not traveling. It was scary.
And have you been traveling since? Have you started again?
I've made 2 trips since, and some more in the future now. And it actually felt good to get out and travel.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, there was something so nice about just being at home.
For sure, except for that whole unwashed portion for me.
Well, that was all of us. That was all of us, Alexa. I mean, there were people on talk shows on TV that had their pajama bottoms on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I kept, yeah, like so many people at the beginning, it just felt like unreal. And then when it was real, it was terrifying. And
Well,
now we're back to that unreality again, even though it's still real. It's
yeah.
got that weird feeling again of, did this really just happen?
Well, and maybe fortunate in terms of what we do that we were able to, through miracles like Zoom and, and just the way work happens these days, that we were able to continue working. I know so many people weren't. So I really counted myself lucky that projects continued and and it wasn't a financial burden.
Yeah. And it's in a big picture kind of way. Obviously, there's nothing good about the pandemic, but it is interesting to see people connecting to their surroundings.
Well, we learned a lot of lessons. And of course that's why people I think are doing so much home renovation right now. I mean they're so much more familiar with their surroundings that they
more invested, and not just monetarily. They get how important it is to their.
Yeah.
The minute things got better, I had to rip out some bathrooms in my mother's house in the Hamptons, so I could have those baths I wasn't taking. But yeah, it's amazing that even for people like us who are supposed to know better, there are plenty of lessons to be learned.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got 8 minutes left with you, unless you toss me aside. Would you ever work way abroad, or have you?
No, I have only worked in this country, and but I had some clients once that took me to Italy so that we could go shopping, but no. But
would you want to?
I don't know. I feel like I feel safer closer to home, in terms of how I work and what I do, and and also it sounds like like a lot of people you'd have to depend on to get things done.
That's a revealing statement. You have to depend on people to get things done anyway.
Well, yeah, but I know these people. I mean, they're contractors I've worked with over and over.
I guess it's back to your being sticky.
Yeah.
I mean, you're working with the same crews that you've worked with.
If I can, I love it. I love the whole, the aspect of working with great people in terms of what they do, and think how much we learn from all the people who do the metal work and all the extraordinary things that are part of what we do.
That might have been like maybe the most important lesson you learned with Disney on Parade.
To work with the crew.
Having to work with that family crew.
Yes.
And appreciating everybody's place in it on equal footing.
And respecting them too, even if you happen to be the person that's in charge and at some level, it's like they're you're nothing.
Without them, nothing's happening.
Yep. Yeah.
Did you have any people that you work with retire this past year?
Wow. Not really, but
good. I mean, it was something that was stressing me out during it. That would everybody we work with and who we depend upon. Yeah. That great cast of characters, were they going to make it all the way through?
Well, but a dear friend, who's a designer, retired, and he's younger than me, and I just thought, I mean, I think he was ready to do that anyway, but somehow the pandemic, sort of like moved him in that direction.
You don't know if it's going to stay that way, right?
Yeah. But I think, this was the major decision for him to make. And I just thought, why? I just want to keep on working. I just want to go on until I can't do it anymore.
So when's the next book coming out?
Oh, man.
Speaking of.
That whole idea of trying to get the rights to photographs and all the stuff that in the beginning when Paige used to photograph everything for us, I didn't bring other photographers in, and suddenly I realized I didn't own any of the images of my own work. So
but you learned that a while ago.
Well, not soon enough, but yes, I did. I certainly photograph them now. but you know, yeah, they were saying at Rizzoli, you know, hey, let's think about another book, and it was fun. It was really fun. So I
And
don't
you've
know.
left a lot on the table. If it was just Hollywood,
Yeah.
you said like 50% more.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's lots of other projects, and there are projects, you know, fun projects going on right now that, you know, I would love to be able to, you know, have people see, you know, in the context of a book.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
We've decided for you.
Yeah,
We've
and it's something to
decided
do.
yeah.
You can't stop. That's the whole thing.
Yeah,
I thought, yeah,
absolutely.
now it'll be nice to just kind of rest, and then you realize all you want is a new project.
Yeah, I think when you're deep in a project, all you want is to like have to achieve the happy result. But
Yeah,
there's nothing scarier than something being completed.
yeah.
It's like, I gotta get on to the next thing. Um, well, Stephen, I love seeing you. I can't wait to see you in person.
Me
I'm going to
too.
go look with everybody else. I'm going to go look on av.com to see your house. And I miss you.
I miss you too. So I mean, we're all back at it now. So
Yeah,
I
we
hope
need
we get
we need
together
to
soon.
play.
And this has been so much fun. As apprehensive as I was about talking, I thought,
Were
how can
you?
Alexa
That's
do this for an
terrible.
hour? How can she go on for an hour? And it just flew by. It's fun. These are wonderful, in-depth, you know, interviews that you do. So thank you for
But it's
thinking
also
of me, and thank you for doing it.
no, it's so like your story is pretty incredible. It's really exciting. So thank you.
Thank you. All righty.
Love you.
Love you too.
Kisses and see you in the flesh.
Say hey to Harry. Okay.
I will.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.